Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Donald Trump is behaving like a rogue dictator who's failing to respect international rules and laws. That's according to the Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry, who used her speech yesterday to attack the US president and condemned his recent threat to totally destroy North Korea. Well, we wondered if Labour members agreed with her assessment of the respective leaders of America and North Korea, so we asked Ellie Price to do her bit to maintain world order and take the mood box and find out.
Sometimes at conference you can feel you're in a bit of a bubble. Apparently the rest of the world has recently been talking about the potential for nuclear annihilation. So today we're asking delegates who of these two is the most dangerous, Donald Trump or Kim Jong-un?
Quite a close call, but I would probably have to say Kim, because there are probably just enough checks and balances in the US Constitution to kind of control what Trump can do.
Definitely Donald Trump. He's got the bigger military, more nuclear weapons. I'm going with Trump.
North Korea are backed into a corner and they're fearful. And somebody who's fearful is more dangerous, so for that reason.
I think Kim Jong-un narrowly inches it from Donald Trump. I think, yeah, we need some real leadership on the world stage, and we're not getting it from either of these guys.
He incites hate. He promotes a divide in society.
This man's bad. That one's insane. I know the difference.
I think he's an absolutely dangerous thing for the civilized world. His words, and hopefully not his actions, are scaring lots of people around the planet, and I hope to God the American people see sense soon.
Donald Trump should pack his bags and say goodbye to the White House. Off he should go with a trumpety Trump. Goodbye, Trump. Thank you.
That one is a complete and utter maniac.
Yeah, but so's that one.
Imperialist past of the US and the influence and power that they have worldwide. Whereas the other person, I think he's just sort of a naughty person.
Do you think it's more dangerous though, Alex?
Donald Trump. They're both balmy, but I suspect he's balmier.
Well, we've used 2 bags, and I don't think I've ever seen the mood box this full, but it would seem for delegates here at least, the answer is clear. It's Donald Trump who is the most dangerous man. Are you surprised at the reaction?
Yes, I am.
I'm not. It's Labour Party conference.
That was Ellie Price with the mood box. We can welcome now the Shadow Minister for Peace and Disarmament, Fabian Hamilton. Welcome to the set here in Brighton. Do you think Donald Trump, like many of the delegates here, is more dangerous than Kim Jong-un?
No, and I don't like Donald Trump, but he's definitely not more dangerous. You know, America has a very robust constitution, and it's designed to stop somebody becoming a dictator if they're elected as president. I abhor his politics, I don't like his personality, but he's not Kim Jong-un.
So are you surprised that so many Labour delegates here at the conference believe that Donald Trump, the elected leader of our closest ally, arguably, is more dangerous than a tyrant, as you said, who's trying to develop nuclear weapons?
Well, I am a bit surprised, yes, because if any student of American Constitution should know that the Constitution prevents the kind of things that Kim Jong-un is getting away with. And besides which, you know, there's no comparison in the scale of the two nations and the resources that they have. And certainly Donald Trump does not arrest, imprison and execute people who disagree with him.
So are you worried by the mood then amongst some Labour delegates?
Well, what I'm worried about is the threat that Kim Jong-un poses to the world and the reaction by the United States to that threat. I think obviously you've got to show that you're going to stand up to a bully and a dictator, but America is several thousand times more powerful than Kim Jong-un and North Korea, and the people of North Korea are deeply oppressed and starved in order to make way for these nuclear weapons that they think they need to have.
So do you think it was responsible that the Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry, your colleague, suggested Trump could be compared to some kind of rogue dictator in his threats against North Korea? Is that the sort of language you should be using?
Look, there was a lot of knockabout. It was a great speech, and I sat there in the front row listening, and I could see how well crafted it was. It's always good to use a bit of humour, a little bit of knockabout. She was trying to get the point across, of course, but behaving like a dictator is not the same as being a dictator. He's not a dictator.
Labour sees itself as a government in waiting, and it has plenty of evidence to back that up in terms of polling at the moment. If Jeremy Corbyn became Prime Minister, would you expect him to deal with Donald Trump and speak to him, despite the fact that Emily Thornberry thinks he is a kind of rogue dictator?
We have to, but you know, Donald Trump is not the dictator of the United States. He's the president, he's the figurehead, and yes, what he says matters, but he's part of a complex system of government that's full of bureaucracy and has many, many characters and many checks and balances. Kim Jong-un doesn't.
Labour has criticised Donald Trump with justification, people will say, in many cases, but not Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. And the UN Human Rights Chief has said democracy in Venezuela, to use his words, is barely alive, if still alive.
Well, we clearly need to criticise the abuse of human rights and dictatorship anywhere in the world
but why not
where
in
people
Venezuela?
are oppressed. Well, we should criticise Venezuela.
But do you think Jeremy
I've never been asked about it.
Or do you think Jeremy Corbyn's been reluctant to do so?
I don't know, because I don't deal with Venezuela, and I haven't been asked before now to comment it. I thought I was going to be discussing how we deal with North Korea and the dictator there, and that is something I have looked into.
But as you say, it is about how we deal with partners across the world, and there should be some consistency.
Yes, of course, we should always be
consistent.
consistent.
I mean, isn't it now the case, on the basis of that report and the way protests have been put down in Venezuela, that Jeremy Corbyn should specifically condemn the government there?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn always stands up for human rights where they are oppressed anywhere in the world. One of the last conversations I had with him just before conference was that he would like me, as the Shadow Minister for Peace and Disarmament, to do more work on the oppression of people and their lack of human rights and the way human rights are being abused in countries all over the world, including North Korea and Iran and other countries. So I think he's quite consistent from that point of view. He stands up for the oppressed, he always has done, and that's what his government will do.
Right. I mean, if you're Shadow Minister for Peace and Disarmament, you're not shadowing anyone specifically in that position.
No, that's absolutely right. I'm shadowing about 5 people, actually. So,
so you're very busy, I should think.
Very busy,
and it's a big task if you're got to have world peace break out.
Yes, I'm trying my best.
What exactly would you be doing in your job if there is a Labour government?
Well, I would hope that we'd bring together sections of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office with sections of the Ministry of Defence. One of the issues that Emily raised yesterday was the control of arms exports and exporting arms to regimes that are then using them for oppressive purposes or using them illegally, actually, in the case of, we believe, the case of Saudi Arabia. But we need a much, much more coherent and careful system of arms export. That's one point. But I mean, the other area is actually looking at where conflict may arise. So, for example, we've got Qatar and the Arab states, including Saudi Arabia and Egypt, taking out sanctions and boycotting Qatar. Could that erupt into a hot war? I hope not.
Right.
But we could do something to stop that happening.
And on the basis of putting some of those plans into practice, if a Labour government is elected, has the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry, met civil servants, as has been reported, to discuss some of Labour's plans?
I believe she has, and I think that's normal. A few days before an election, the senior civil servants always meet the shadow cabinet members in their particular department, just in case the opposition does win. And of course, nobody knew what was going to happen on June the 8th. We could have won. Another couple of weeks, we would have won, I think.
Fabian Hamilton, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Joe.
Now, even by Donald Trump's own standards, it's been quite a start to the week. His attacks on sportsmen who've knelt in protest during the national anthem have continued, drawing criticism that he's neglected the struggles of more than 3 million United States citizens in Puerto Rico following Hurricane Maria. Today, he announced he will visit there on Tuesday. The president's also been accused by North Korea of declaring war, and his latest healthcare repeal bill is in deep trouble. Our Washington correspondent Kylie Morris joins us now from the White House. What's he been saying, Kylie?
John, it was a bit of a pick and mix performance, really, from the president. He was asked repeated questions about North Korea. We'll come back to those in a moment. But he was also asked whether he hadn't been preoccupied by this issue of black athletes kneeling during the playing of the national anthem. Those who are playing in the National Football League, American football here, rather than focusing on things that he needed to focus on, like Puerto Rico. There has been some suggestion that he is playing to his base with this issue about who is a patriot, how you respect the flag, rather than dealing with matters at hand. This is what he had to say to that.
Well, I wasn't preoccupied with the NFL. I was ashamed of what was taking place, because to me that was a very important moment. I don't think you can disrespect our country, our flag, our national anthem. To me, the NFL situation is a very important situation. I've heard that before about was I preoccupied. Not at all. Not at all. I have plenty of time on my hands. All I do is work.
And on North Korea, latest position?
Well, no change really, more kind of belligerent talk from him. He was talking about the North Korean position that America had effectively declared war against North Korea. Donald Trump says that is not so, but they are prepared, if necessary, to take, as he described it, the military option. Here's what he said.
He's acting very badly. He's saying things that should never, ever be said. And we're replying to those things, but it's a reply. It's not an original statement, it's a reply. But the things that he's said over the last year, and if you look back, the things that he said to past administrations, North Korea is a situation that should have been handled 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and 5 years ago, and it could have been handled much more easily. You had various administrations, many administrations, which left me a mess. But I'll fix the mess.
President Trump did announce today more sanctions on North Korean banks, so effectively Washington trying to really tighten the screws on Pyongyang, but otherwise a lot of rhetoric, and as the president insists, the military option is on the table.
Kylie Morris in Washington.
On the roller coaster of rhetoric directed towards North Korea, President Trump and his advisers were sending out mixed messages today. While they were talking about diplomacy, he was still warning that any military option would be devastating for North Korea. President Trump said the problem of North Korea should have been cleared up by previous presidents years ago. Now it was up to him to fix the mess.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
All day, his administration has been talking about diplomacy. Tonight, the rhetoric returned to destruction, to devastation.
If we take that option, it will be devastating, I can tell you that, devastating for North Korea. That's called the military option. If we have to take it, we will. He's acting very badly. He's saying things that should never, ever be said. And we're replying to those things, but it's a reply. It's not an original statement, it's a reply.
He's talking about a statement from North Korea's foreign minister. It said President Trump, who has called Kim Jong-un a madman, had declared war with a tweet. The dictator, who has called the president mentally deranged, didn't step back. Propaganda video released yesterday imagines how North Korea might respond to an attack. Others are more restrained.
That is our goal, to solve this diplomatically.
Applying economic and diplomatic means primarily.
We're going to continue to pursue our diplomatic efforts and hope that that's the way we'll solve this. Thank you.
Wendy Sherman advised the Clinton administration on North Korea and has some advice for this one.
Well, usually around nuclear weapons, we don't goad another leader into actually thinking about using them or escalating a military situation. So I think it's quite dangerous.
It was about 25 years ago that relations between the US and North Korea became increasingly strained. In 1994, President Clinton ordered the US military to plan an attack when Kim Il-sung refused to admit nuclear weapons inspectors. In 2002, George W. Bush famously declared North Korea under Kim Jong-il part of an axis of evil. And now President Trump and Kim Jong-un appear to have brought the relationship to a new low with their war of words. President Trump says he's trying to fix the mess of North Korea, a mess he inherited, he says, and he's right. But his critics here fear that a self-discipline deficit between him and his administration might make resolution impossible. Rohit Khat, True News at 10, Washington.
I've been